The activists parading around as video game journalists are desperate for clicks. Their sites are dying, their platforms are disappearing, and they are becoming desperate. And now Nathan Grayson over at Aftermath has decided to put out this massive hit piece on rage baiters and internet trolls, saying Highguard is yet another symptom and victim of a rapidly decaying internet, and he decided to target me of all people. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I'm sure a lot of you don't even know who Nathan Grayson is, you don't know what Aftermath is. He used to be Kotaku, but most famously, he had an ex-hookup named Zoe Quinn. He slept with her and gave her positive coverage about her game, and that led to the start of Gamergate 1. So yes, this guy decided, hey, I can get some booty if I cover this chick's game in a positive manner. And well, now he's desperate for clicks over on his site because it apparently is only getting roughly 27,000 visits a month. That is for January so far. Ooh, 33,000 in December and 41,000 in November. So he's really struggling right now. I understand. I'll give him some coverage because he decided to put up this absolutely dumb article saying Highguard is yet another symptom and victim of a rapidly decaying internet. He goes in damage controls for Highguard and all of these large games that have come out, and he talks about how toxicity is rampant on the internet. And keep in mind that his whole spiel originally when getting into the video game industry and heavily covering video games was sexism in gaming. So he is a male feminist. He's somebody who I guess couldn't even keep Zoe Quinn interested long enough to start a relationship with him. So I don't know how he expects to keep readers around. Now, a lot of this article is just talking about the situations and how you have something like Wildlight not actually marketing the game after the Game Awards and how it stirred up a lot of controversy. But speaking with Kotaku, Wildlight Entertainment co-founder Chad Grenier explained that the plan since day one had been to shadow drop the fantastical FPS, as it had worked out well for his previous project, Apex Legends. But then Jeff Keighley, an old friend, stepped in, which if you needed any more proof that Highguard was trash and you haven't even played it or you did not watch my single live stream of it, yeah. I mean, them speaking with Kotaku is a red flag. They said, we've known Jeff for a long time, and he said, let me do something that's maybe a little risky in hindsight, but different, to take a free-to-play PvP raid shooter and do something with it. So we rushed a trailer together. I wish the reception had been better, but in hindsight, we made a trailer to entertain really quickly and didn't show the gameplay loop, what's different and unique. Now, I actually put 5 hours of my life into this game, and I hated it. The game crashed multiple times, and it got to the point where I was one more crash away from being locked out of playing the game because every time it crashes, it says that you abandoned the match. So, yeah, that's a really bad sign. No wonder the game is currently at 11,103 players 2 days after release. A 90% player drop, but it's the toxic chuds that killed this game, guys, not the game itself, which sucks. The big part here is the fact that, yes, he does reference my videos, which is hilarious to me. And on the post on X, he doesn't even tag me, even though he's talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. Just goes to show that these people who say that they're above the toxic YouTubers don't actually want to have a conversation. But it says Highguard got hit even harder than it otherwise might have due to the fact that, at least in games, December constitutes the dead of winter and there wasn't really a next thing for cynical, opportunistic content creators to monkey bar over to. So one video became 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then so on. With each passing week, continued silence from Wildlight functioned as an additional evidence that something was amiss. The Highguard mystery unfortunately lent itself perfectly to Sloptuber's regular stream of videos, and he does highlight my 4 videos I made over the span of a month and a half. Well, actually it was basically 2 months. So, ooh, 4 videos over 2 months, guys. That's a lot. They're farming. It says, though, and then there was the Concord of it all. While comparisons were clumsy at best, Highguard does not have major publisher backing. For one, the facts of a situation do not matter in the modern social media landscape. Feelings dictate people's response, and they are easily and algorithmically manipulated. The comparison does not have to do with the monetization scheme. It does not actually have to do with the publisher backing. The response and the comparisons to Concord and other similar games was the look of the experience. Okay, I never went into a video and said, oh my gosh, it's a $500 million failure, or oh my gosh, nobody's gonna monetarily support this because their microtransaction scheme is bad. I never said anything like that. So yeah, I mean, it's fine to point out that it doesn't have a major publisher backing, but this wasn't even my argument. He says rage at the industry, misdirected or not, did the rest. Certainly there is warranted fatigue around live service games emerging from the AAA, or in Wildlight's case, AAA adjacent sector. Big, more traditional video game companies want a ladle full of the perpetual stew. Fortnite, League of Legends, and a small handful of others have transformed into an infinite food supply, and in pursuit of that, they've misused and abused once great studios and released a series of duds like the aforementioned Concord. By no means a terrible game, but something so aggressively fine that it failed to really grab anyone. See, within this word salad, I did agree that there are a lot of companies that are in pursuit of the League of Legends and Fortnite popularity, and yes, they have misused and abused once great studios, but then he goes into, it was a fine game. Concord sucked, plain and simple. There's a reason it died in 2 weeks. Just take the big L, Nathan. He says, though, but right-wing Sloptubers have repeatedly harnessed this energy to feed their endless culture wars, claiming that diversity is the reason these games fail. I never once said that diversity is the only reason Concord failed. I never once said diversity is the reason Dustborn failed. I never once said diversity is the only reason that Highguard failed. Yes, sometimes there are character designs and things like the addition of pronouns that do damage the game when it comes to the reception. But if you still have a game that has fantastic and phenomenal and amazing gameplay, it's going to succeed. Look at something like Arc Raiders, for example. I think most of the character designs in that game look like trash. You have body type 1 and 2. You don't even have gender. But the gameplay itself and the game loop is so good and the maps are so good that people will still play it and people still love it. Diversity is not the only reason why a game dies. And to claim that I have claimed that diversity is the reason these games fail is absolutely fucking ridiculous, and it's just not true. But this is just what liberals do in 2026. They need to label you as a racist and a sexist and a homophobe and a bigot in order to get you deplatformed, because they do not want the people they view as their opponents to have a platform. They believe that we are evil for having a different opinion than them, and so they need to label you terrible things to justify terrible things that happen to us. And of course, he calls me a right-wing Sloptuber. By the way, I'm not a conservative. I'm a libertarian. I've been very open about this on my channel, but of course, he wouldn't actually do 2 seconds of research, and he's just going to call me this thing because he doesn't like my opinions, and that's fine. You know, I've always said this. I'm perfectly okay with being labeled right-wing or conservative or even a bigot or an hysterophobe if that is how you feel about me, because ultimately I would rather be called that than a leftist lunatic. That's for sure. Definitely don't agree with anybody on that side of the aisle, but they say more than that. They want them to fail. They approach the prospect with a sort of knives-out glee. All of this fits their narrative that even with hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, they are the brave little guys speaking truth to power amid an industry of shill-happy journalists and agenda-pushing developers. I'm glad you said it, because that's true. The industry is filled with shill-happy journalists who are often paid to promote games. Cough, cough, sometimes they are given sexual favors, but you do push agendas, or else you would have reached out to me and said, hey, listen, I want to write this piece about what's happened with Highguard. This is my section of the article. What is your thought on this topic? What is your thought? Do you think that maybe you want to have a conversation? But of course, someone like Nathan Grayson isn't going to do that because he doesn't want to sit here and actually be called a Marxist, and that is what he is. He wants to sit in his little echo chamber, not be challenged, and that isn't happening because he's being wrecked on social media over this article. But it is absolutely insane to me that you will sit here and say that I want games to fail. Last year, I live streamed 51 games and I streamed over 800 hours of video games. Okay, I clearly don't want video games to fail because I love video games. I say it all the time. Again, not like he's listening to my content, but if tomorrow I woke up and every single video game was amazing and phenomenal and a 10 out of 10, I would be the happiest person alive. The reason why I have this channel, the reason why I talk about the things that I talk about is because there is such a disconnect between companies and consumers. There is such a massive problem where we do see activists weaseling their way into these industries, into these companies, onto these projects. They get people with different opinions fired, their opinions are silenced, and then they control culture. And that is what Marxists do best, is they weasel their way in, they destroy, and they don't care what happens after that. I want to protect video games. I want to protect the industry. And I'm not even sitting here saying that, ooh, all liberals need to be purged from the video game industry. That's not the case. You should be able to go into work and leave your personal politics at the door and still create amazing content, and then everybody would be happy because there'd be all different sorts of people in the video game industry. But it is a massive liberal club at this point, filled with people who do not care about making high quality entertainment. They just care about using video games as a vessel to push propaganda. This is a problem that I call out constantly, and you're not going to bring that up. The rest of this article is really him damage controlling for Highguard. He even goes on to say that on one hand, you can't deny that all this free publicity bolstered the game's player count, with its launch day numbers peaking at nearly 100,000 concurrents. That is uncommon for an indie shooter, to say the least. And then he says, on the other hand, public sentiment is not great. Technical issues and performance problems are being received even worse than they otherwise would be. But he doesn't update the article to point out that, yeah, this game has lost 90% of its players in 2 days. Yesterday, on the 24-hour mark, it was down 80%, but it is sitting at terrible scores on Steam. It is sitting at mostly negative still, and it is because this game is bad. It is not a good game. So you're going on this massive damage control spree for a game that nobody is playing anymore. Everybody is pointing and laughing at. And clearly, if you don't have players in your game that is free to play, you're not making money, and you're not going to be able to keep these servers online. So yeah, you can sit here and call me a right-wing Sloptuber all you want, but that's not going to save this absolute pile of trash. So yes, Nathan Grayson has decided to put up this big old hit piece on YouTubers that he doesn't agree with and paints us all as evil bigots. No shocker there, but his post is getting absolutely destroyed over this. I know I had ratioed it. Savvy had said, why isn't the target audience showing up? It has nothing to do with rapidly decaying internet because Marvel Rivals doesn't have this particular issue. Neither do a few other games. Look at something like Arc Raiders. It's still got insane player counts. It's okay to say the game is slop and bad. They have no chat function, no typing, no scoreboard, despite wanting to be the new competitive itch to scratch, needlessly large maps, outsourced the heroes of the hero shooter, managed to pay for a direct of vibes culture manager instead of in-house artists. It won't kill you to be objective about a game, and yeah, it is just terrible all around. Oh, go cry me a river. It's not our fault they released a game filled with bugs after hyping it up like it was the best thing ever. People stopped playing it because it sucked, or the game is just trash. People are still addicted to Arc Raiders, and then a glare. Welcome home, put the fries in the bag. tags, so I'm curious to see if he's going to put up a follow-up article to get another 10 clicks on his website, but either way, he's just proved yet again the big problem with video game journalists in that they are going to constantly shill for these big games or games that they believe are going to own the chuds, and then when they fail, they go radio silent on it. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.